Welcome back everyone. Today we have the Oupes Mega 2 portable power station. This is the newest addition for Oupes' flagship lineup for 2023. This new Mega 2 starts shipping in November just in time for the 2024 camping season. I'm excited to review this new Mega 2 because Oupes has made quite a few changes since the last time I tested their products almost 2 years ago. In fact, in all of my videos testing the old Oupes lineup, I would say Oupes or Oupes, and nobody knew exactly how to pronounce this word. So now it's official. This is Oupes, and they're trying to have no power Oupes with the Oupes portable power station. In my short time testing this new Oupes Mega 2, I've found 3 things that I like so far that have been massive improvements since the old Oupes lineup was released about 2 years ago. The first is they've essentially gone away with the 8mm barrel plug inputs. I wasn't a huge fan of those barrel plug inputs, and the newest lineup has Anderson power pole inputs. On top of that, the AC inverters on the new Mega lineup are very powerful, and they're more forgiving to those high resistive loads that normally would cause the inverter to shut down. And then the final improvement that I'm really happy with, and this is more of a cosmetic observation, is that Oupes has gone away with that silicone rubber gasket material that made up the orange component of the older portable power stations. If you're asking how many outputs does the Oupes Mega 2 have, the answer is basically all of them. But all joking aside, this thing has a massive 360 watt or 12 volt 30 amp Anderson power pole outlet. It has 2 100 watt USB-C outlets and 4 18 watt USB-A outlets. Later on in my testing, I want to find out if I can pull 200 watts from this panel from these 2 100 watt USB-C outputs. Moving down, the Mega 2 has a 2500 watt continuous AC inverter with 4 outlets rated at 2500 watts continuous, and it can handle surges up to 5400 watts. This is a pretty big improvement over most of their other power stations. Typically, they would have a 2000 watt inverter on a device with this size of battery. And then moving over here, it has a 30 amp RV TT30R outlet. And then finally, it has your standard 12 volt DC panel with 2 5521 barrel plug inputs and a standard car charging output. There are multiple ways to charge this portable power station. It can be topped off through this Anderson power pole jack or this AC wall jack. You can push up to 2100 watts in the Anderson power pole jack, and this jack is pretty impressive because it'll accept 150 volts, 15 amps max, meaning that you can wire multiple solar panels in series to achieve that 2100 watts. 150 volts is much higher than the usual 60 volts that these typically top off at. Additionally, you can charge this thing from your car using a standard car charging to Anderson power pole adapter. This AC input accepts up to 1600 watts, and you can limit that to 800 watts if you don't like to push that much power. The power meter on this channel is a little low, so zap the subscribe button. It'll give us a little jolt and electrify my channel. Since the Oupes Mega 2 has such a massive AC inverter, I wanted to go ahead and set up a massive inverter test. For this test, I have a space heater that can pull a maximum of about 1500 watts. I have my heat gun that pulls 1800 watts. This little My Heat space heater pulls around 200 watts. And then finally, the air compressor that pulls a maximum of around 2000 for its startup wattage, but it runs at approximately about 1000 watts steady state. This thing is rated at 2500 watts continuous. So between the combination of all of these, I should be able to pull that 2500 watt continuous load. Additionally, I want to demonstrate the emergency power supply or pass-through charging capability of the Mega 2. The Mega 2 is not an uninterruptible power supply, which indicates that it might have a 20 millisecond changeover speed or less. In this case, it's advertised as emergency power supply. That means it will stay hooked up. You can do pass-through charging, but there might be a slightly higher delay than you would expect. However, this thing is still pretty good at keeping devices running during that transition. In addition, before I start this test, I want to point out that I'm getting about 123 volts in both of my meters here. These are the meters that I usually use for my battery capacity test. So in this case, I just want to track that voltage as I hit that 2500 watt limit to see if the voltage drops to allow other devices that pull more than 2500 watts to continue to run. This is a method that a lot of power stations are starting to use lately, such as EcoFlow with their X-Boost mode and Bluetti with their powerlifting mode. Oupes doesn't explicitly call this out in their literature, but this is also something that they've done in their latest generation of power stations. To begin this AC inverter test, I'm going to go ahead and dial the space heater all the way up to 3. I've hit around 1500 watts. That's what I expect to get. In addition to that, you can hear the fans in this Mega 2 kicking in. These fans are not the quietest fans. They're not obnoxiously loud, but it is definitely something that I'm hearing anytime I put a load on the Mega 2. And what that means to me is that the Mega 2 has some pretty good heat management. Now that the space heater is giving me 1500 watts, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my little mini space heater. Between those two devices, I should be at about 17 or 1800 watts when I'm at steady state. Now that I have a little bit of a load on the Mega 2, I have dropped from 123 volts down to 116 volts. I want to see if it'll stay above 110 up to 2500 watts. Let me try to dial it up to that exact 2500 watts using this heat gun. So I'm banging up on that 2500 watt limit. The Mega 2 is returning 113 volts, which is a pretty decent amount of voltage. But one thing I heard is I am close to or breaking that 2500 watt limit, so the device is turning off and turning back on. In EPS mode, the Mega 2 will pass power directly from the wall outlet to your output devices. Anything above that maximum AC input of 1800 watts is going to be coming from the internal battery. So what's going on right now is the power station is trying to keep the battery topped off while it's pulling more than it can get from the AC wall outlet. So it's performing as expected. Now I want to see if I can push that AC inverter over the top and fail it. So this thing is rated at 2500 watts continuous or 5400 watts for surges. So apparently running just above the 2500 watts, it will eventually time out. And it ran like that for quite a while above 2500 watts. Let me see if I can do a better job of dialing in below 2500 watts and then spiking that maximum 5400 watt load. Something I'm really impressed with is I'm at just about exactly 2500 watts and the voltage has leveled off at 119 volts. That means I'm getting the voltage I want for almost any device that I want to run from this power station. Now I'm going to pull in this massive load right here, and no matter what I do, I expect the power station to shut down, but I just want to see how long it will run with the air compressor adding to the 2500 watt load. I expected to trigger the overload protection. Something I noticed was that I dropped down to 100 volts. This thing tried to attenuate that load to around 2500 watts. And then it said, hey, between all of these things that I'm pulling out of this power station, I did hit its limits. So for this portable power station, I would say 2500 watts of continuous load is a realistic expectation. I'm gonna give the Mega 2 a break, top it off, and start my battery capacity rundown test. Changing the charging speed for this power station is somewhat strange, but it's not very complicated. I'm going to hold this I and this DC button at the same time for about 3 to 5 seconds. Once the screen starts to flash, you'll see that this is in the low setting. I'm going to cycle from low to high using this IoT button, and when I'm done making my selection, I'm going to go ahead and hold the power button for another 3 to 5 seconds until I get a confirmation that I have set this thing successfully in high charging mode. Now you may want to put this in low mode if you don't need access to that 1600 watts of power at all times. So in a power outage where you're expecting intermittent power, I would definitely bump that back up to that 1600 watts of input. But for everyday use, I would just leave that in the 800 watt mode because that allows your battery to take a little less time to recharge while also eliminating some of the heat that might be generated that could cause the battery life to degrade a little quicker than you might expect. Another new feature that I have not tried yet for the new Oupes power stations is its Wi-Fi and Bluetooth app. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can connect that right here for the first time on camera. Scanning the QR code nestled right under the handle took me straight to the Oupes website and is going to allow this app to download, and then I'll show you guys some of its features. While I continue to wait for this thing to pair, let's talk about the expansion capability. This power station can be expandable up to 10,240 watt hours, so 10.2 kilowatt hours. That's going to be achieved by using expansion batteries that plug in right here. The expansion batteries do come with the battery cable, and that battery cable can be used to either stack the device with the expansion batteries or place them in an array that fits the location that you want them to be in. Okay, so I finally got this device successfully added. Let's see what we got next. All right, it says that I can run as is for 4 days and 14 to 21 hours. Internal temperature of the battery is 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, I have no inputs going in right now. I can turn on and turn off any of the outlets. I like this because that means I can set this in a more remote location and maybe run a long extension cord or even this TT30R output somewhere more convenient for me without having to look at and listen to this device while it's actually powering everything that I'm using. So that's a pretty significant feature for my uses where I don't necessarily want this in the middle of what I'm doing, but I want to have access to all of the outlets. Let's go into the settings mode. In settings, we can rename it. And of course, the name of my Mega 2 is Off Grid Adventure. And on that note, if you haven't done so, please subscribe or just give me a thumbs up if you're already subscribed. So I like this. I can change unit timeout to never, 30 minutes, an hour. Those options are awesome because occasionally I don't want this thing to time out. If it's under load, it won't time out. If it's charging, it won't time out. So putting it at 30 minutes isn't a huge deal for my testing configurations. Firmware update wasn't very complicated. It did take about 3 minutes, which isn't a lot of time. I used that time to plug in some of my lights that have died throughout the studio here. I did have to unlink and relink the device once the firmware update was complete. That's not a huge deal either, but it is just one additional step that I had to take. Moving on down, we can go to specifications, and it appears to be loading a screen from the Oupes website. And this is perfect. It has all of the information about the device that we're covering in this video. Now we're going to do the battery capacity rundown test. I have my heat gun set at about 409 watts, which is 0.2 C of the Oupes Mega 2's 2048 watt hour internal battery. I'm going to begin the test by turning on the heat gun, and now that the heat gun is up to its operating wattage, I'm going to reset this gauge and disconnect the power supply at the same time. So we'll check in a little bit and see how much power we got from this battery. This battery test returned quite a bit more power than I expected. It came back with 1,887 watt hours from this 2048 watt hour battery. That's 92.1%. I'm actually a little impressed. Now I want to find out, how long does the Oupes take to recharge from 0%? This test measures the time it takes to recharge the device from 0% using its fastest recharge mode. To measure this test, I'm going to hit start on this timer and plug in the power station to the wall outlet at the same time. Let's go ahead and get this test started. We got a pretty decent recharge time of 50% in 45 minutes 80% in an hour and 13 minutes, and a total top off of 100% in 1 hour and 33 minutes. That's pretty typical of most of your top tier, high powered portable power stations that are currently on the market. Oupes sent me this power station for a test and review, and so while I'm talking about this company, I wanted to mention that they return 5% of their proceeds to giveaways and other donations to help the community. Particularly, I believe it's with power stations for places that are affected by disaster where they don't have power. And while I'm on that topic, they are hosting a giveaway on their channel, a pretty massive Thanksgiving event where they're going to give away 4 or 5 massive power stations like this, other power stations, and maybe a couple smaller ones. If you're interested in entering that giveaway, go to @Oupes Official, @OUPES Official. They have a video there called Empowering Homes, How Oupes Makes a Difference in Florida Hurricane Seasons. Go to that video, subscribe, like it, and leave a comment about what you're most thankful for this Thanksgiving. They're gonna randomly select from those comments the winners of that contest on the 24th of November. So if you're interested, go check that out. I have a few thoughts on who this portable power station is perfect for. If you want something that will last you for a few days off grid, whether that's during a power outage or out camping where you'll be able to cook, add massive amounts of solar power, or add some of those expansion batteries up to over 10,000 watt hours, then this is a great buy. This is cheaper than some of the competitors such as the EcoFlow Delta 2 Max or the Bluetti AC200 Max, which have very similar specifications to this device. Additionally, the power conversion for this was phenomenal. Getting 92% conversion from that 2048 watt hour battery is a very good result for a power station of this size. Overall, this power station is worth the consideration if you're looking for something in that 2000 watt hour and 2000 watts of AC output range. This thing has that 2500 watt inverter, so it can handle almost anything that you put in its path. The price may go up after the seasonal sales, but for $1,139, you honestly can't beat this power station in this price range. Thank you for watching this Oupes Mega 2 portable power station review. Please consider subscribing and check out this video to learn about the Oupes 600 portable power station.